In this episode of Fifth Gear, we examine road rage, test drive the new Smart Roadster, and get a close-up look at the BMW movies.
Good evening. It is a mild spring evening and all is well with my world. But if I was to get into one of these funny metal things driving past, I would magically change from a reasonable, even-handed human being into a nutter. What is it about driving cars that can make us so terribly, terribly angry? In your lane!
Walk in the middle of the road!
And you, mate. Get out of it. Well, tonight we're going to try and help make the roads a calmer place. We're not getting mad, we're getting even with road rage.
It's not a media invention. In Singapore, dealing with angry motorists is part of the driving test, and a recent European survey showed road rage is on the up. The Spanish prefer verbal abuse, whilst the Germans like to tailgate, with millimetric precision, no doubt. In Italy, you'll see a lot of wild gesticulations. And in Portugal, well, they just sit there bored, flashing their lights.
And apparently the angriest nation is our own. 80% of people in the UK admit that at some time or another they have been unable to calm their climbing tempers. And you can understand it because I have done it and I'm sure you have too. You're sitting there, very calm, and then there she is. The antique blue rinser in her old Metro. The geography teacher in his Rover 25, or that old favourite, the psychopath in his BMW 3 Series. I have, and I freely admit it, often given them all both barrels.
But rather worryingly, not everyone leaves it at a bit of ripe language. Us Brits are the ones most likely to resort to aggression and violence.
Now, we've done some research on road rage and come up with some pretty harrowing stories. Listen to some of these. He engaged reverse and started revving hard. He swerved in front of me and approached, wielding a length of 2x2. This is the best. He rammed me and put me in a 20-foot ditch. No, this is the best. He leapt out of his car and put his fists through the windscreen. It's not funny, it's frightening. And Fifth Gear are going to do something about it. Join us in a moment as we prove it is possible to stay calm behind the wheel as we try to reform a serial road rager. And trust me, you wouldn't like him when he's angry.
Car makers, led by BMW, are now using the car chase to sell cars. In a remarkable series of 8 short films, BMW have made their cars into car chase heroes. In each of them, Clive Owen plays the driver who's forever getting out of sticky situations. And starring alongside him are big names like Ray Liotta, Don Cheadle, Gary Oldman, Mickey Rourke, Madonna, not forgetting James Brown, and Marilyn Manson.
I'm trying to read.
Crucially, BMW chose to distribute the films not on TV, but on the internet through a special website. You see, trying to advertise new cars is a tricky business. With more and more channels, it's becoming ever harder for the car companies to make sure they actually get through to their prospective customers, especially as we tend to flick channels as soon as the adverts come on. So the marketing men have found a new way of cutting through, by not hoping we happen to see their adverts, but by making us actively seek them out.
It's going to be okay.
You have to help me, please.
With 40 million internet viewings, BMW's strategy seems to be working. And there are other benefits. TV adverts are governed by strict rules. You can't even hint at speed. But because these films aren't for broadcast, you can show speeding, power sliding, and all sorts of law-breaking action. Now, if you say to BMW, surely this is all a bit irresponsible, they'll simply say it's just a way of demonstrating the brand values of what they call their ultimate driving machines. Big-name directors have been lured to make the films, and each has brought their own style. Ang Lee's kung fu film background shows through in this tightly choreographed car routine. The late John Frankenheimer, who made Grand Prix and the car chase classic Ronin, filmed, guess what? A classic car chase. My favourite, though, is Guy Ritchie's film. It has plenty of black humour, as you'd expect from the man behind Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, plus brilliant driving and his wife, Madonna, who bears the brunt of the laughs. There's one sequence just here where the actor, who maybe seems to be actually driving here, flings on full right-hand lock and then lets go of the wheel totally, and the steering wheel begins to correct itself. We then cut outside to see the car in a fantastic power slide, and I've heard of this technique, but never actually tried it myself. The effect is stunning, if that's how it was done. And then we move on just a little bit further to see another special effect. There's another power slide where the camera seems to be glued to the front of the car. Here it is now, and again, this was actually done with a camera mounted on the bonnet, and they've actually artworked or probably computer graphic the mounting out. But the effect is certainly brilliant. The only problem is, when the car is on opposite lock, you cut then on board the actor with positive lock. So I suppose you can't have everything, especially when you've got Madonna in the back. So what next? Well, the new 5 Series film doesn't have a chase in it, as they're giving us a rest for a while they dream up something rather special for their next new car, the 6 Series Coupe.
We're talking about road rage and have come to Doncaster, a perfectly normal town full of perfectly normal people. We've come to this perfectly normal terrace to meet the owner of this trusty red Fiesta. 29-year-old Rob Hughes is an account manager, a placid, civilised member of society. But by his own admission, he becomes a monster when he drives. Girlfriend Annabelle witnessed one of Rob's biggest red mist moments just a couple of weeks ago.
It was raining very heavily, and this car came hurtling up behind us and his lights were flashing at you. And then you started slamming your brakes on because you just went mad, didn't you?
He undertook, and as he was undertaking, sort of swerved in towards us. Quite a lot of swear words sort of exchanged and hand gestures.
I remember saying to you, just chill out. I was just like, it doesn't matter, it's raining, stop, slow down.
All I was thinking about is I could see him in the distance. I was plotting his demise. I was willing him to hit the lorry he was tailgating.
He decided to try and ram him off the road by swerving into the side of him.
If he'd have spun off the road, even evil as it would be, I would have probably stopped and had a laugh at him. I've never known myself reacting in the same way anywhere else other than in the car.
We wanted to see exactly what it was that wound Rob up. Seemingly, he was massively sensitive to bad drivers. He even has the "How's my driving" numbers programmed into his mobile phone.
Yeah, I mean, learning to drive's great, but why do they learn to drive them so slow? Police cars that do 50 miles an hour in the inside lane. Come on, stupid. Come on, you blonde, not just blind. So. Stupid. Just when I was in a good mood as well. So this car is 400 quid. Most damage I can do to it is 400 quid. It's tempting to pile into it.
Clearly Rob needs some help, so we turn to Europe's leading motoring psychologist and behavioural troubleshooter, Conrad King. He thinks road rage stems from the car's status as the ultimate weapon.
If you want to kill someone in this society, the easiest way to do it is with a car. You don't have to look them in the eye, you don't have to know them, you don't have to care about them. All you need to do is just stop concentrating or lose your temper for 10 seconds. And when you chuck someone in a car, you give them that ability to kill easily. And that's going to change your personality. So you get this feeling of power, this feeling of freedom, you can go anywhere, do anything. And then someone else does something on the roads, and that takes away your feeling of freedom and power. And traditionally, countries and individuals have gone to war to protect their freedom and power.
So how are we going to tone down Rob's warlike instincts? Well, after a quick bit of bonding...
And let's face it, there's a lot of people out there that probably deserve a good kicking, including us at times.
Conrad decided that what we all needed to do was to go shopping. We needed to establish how Rob maintained his cool in everyday life.
And what's astounding here is we've got, hundreds and thousands of people vying for space. There's no traffic lights, there's no routes laid out, and yet there's no conflict. An old guy stalls in front of them. The two of them wander around. I mean, you can see from the body language there, the two of them are completely relaxed, particularly him. And that's with somebody stopping dead almost in front of them. If that had been a driving situation, it'd have been on the horn and wishing him dead. Again, I mean, here's a classic case. You've got someone in a wheelchair, they're having to slow down. You've got someone elderly, they're able to move between them with no fuss whatsoever. If that had been an equivalent driving situation and a disabled driver had been going too slow, he'd have been wanting to do unspeakable things. Here we've got a situation where the woman in front has actually put a card in a couple of times. She's dawdling. Now on the road, he'd be getting frustrated. Here, he can actually see he's dealing with another human being.
And that's the key. Here we're dealing with real people, whereas drivers are dehumanised because they're in a car and so much easier to get angry with. Plus, when walking, you subconsciously give more room to those around you, and a check step or quick smile diffuses any potential conflict. The trick now is to transfer that mindset next time Rob straps himself into his Fiesta. Join us later to see if the retail therapy has worked.
Speeding's easy. So easy, in fact, that even I've recently been caught doing it.
So that's 3 points, a 60 quid fine and a hefty increase in my insurance premium. But in some parts of the country, you can keep your licence clean. All you have to do is take a day off work, pay 95 quid and join some of your fellow speed offenders by going back to school for a few hours.
The aim is to teach people like me that speeding isn't cool and points don't mean prizes. In return, I get to keep a clean licence and my insurance company still thinks I'm an angel. This should be a laugh.
This recently introduced pilot scheme in Lancashire targets those who have been caught doing just 35 in a 30. The idea is these drivers don't want to speed deliberately, but just need some training to get them out of the habit.
We will assess your driving to find out what level you are at, and we'll try to take that level forwards. So what causes you personally to speed? Because we've all got our own reasons.
I think the most common one is probably late for an appointment.
There aren't enough signs to actually indicate that you are entering a 30-mile-an-hour zone or a 40-mile-an-hour zone.
To jump in the car, set off at a comfortable speed, and it's more likely to be closer to 35 than 30.
Adrian, give us something different off your list.
I was enjoying myself.
So, the thrill of driving.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It is.
Off you go.
In an attempt to prove our excuses weren't good enough, we were asked to identify potential hazards from photographs. Chris, our teacher, then went on to highlight what might happen if things turn nasty when we were driving just 5 miles an hour over the limit.
Now, the vehicle going at 30 mile an hour applies the brakes and it manages to stop, comes down to 0. This vehicle's doing 35, just 5 miles an hour difference. Brakes at the same point. What I want to know is, what speed do you think it's travelling at when it hits the cardboard cut out of a child? What do you, Keith?
About 10 or 15.
About 10 to 15.
10.
At 10?
15.
15.
10.
10.
10.
10. The actual impact speed at the end of this was 21 miles an hour. That's for a difference of 5 miles an hour.
Blimey, there's a surprise. And Lancashire aren't the only ones trying to stop you speeding by making you feel guilty. In Surrey, if you get caught, police can give you an alternative to that fixed penalty, the option of looking at some pictures of accidents that resulted from speeding. They reckon it's a more effective deterrent than more speed cameras or the prospect of those extra points on your licence. Back in Lancashire, they round off the course by a sort of driving test. Your own personal instructor takes you round to check up on your observation and other vital skills. It certainly reminded me of a thing or two, and my fellow drivers.
I think it's a really good refresher course, and I think anybody would benefit from it, not just ourselves.
Compared to the experience of 3 points and a fine, this was a much better experience.
And what it's done is it's turned what was essentially a kind of negative experience, i.e. a fine and a points, into quite a positive one.
The real test of the course is whether people will go out speeding again, and at the moment it's too early to tell. But there's no doubt that it's a healthy reminder of the effects of speeding and the need for observation whilst driving. And that must be better news than more points on your licence.
When Mercedes decide to launch a brand new sports car, quite naturally they want to do it in style, which is why they brought us here to Quinto do Lago, Portugal's playground for the rich and famous. But spectacular though it is, I'm not here to try some meaty new Merc. Because I'm here to try this tiny little one. It's the latest from Mercedes offshoot Smart. And don't laugh, it could be the answer to all our prayers. It's a rear-wheel drive, mid-engined, turbocharged sports car for under 15 grand. And it's only Insurance Group 8. First impressions? Well, it hasn't exactly got classic sports car lines, that's for sure. But believe it or not, the wheelbase is actually 1 centimetre longer than on a Porsche 911. It's just that with no overhang at either the front or the rear, it's still a very short car. I definitely don't like this very abruptly chopped off rear to the roofline. And these massive different textures of plastic and different colours certainly take a bit of getting used to. And I don't like this dark plastic around the headlamps. But that looks a bit better. It's the coupe version. And it's got this really nice glazed rear end that provides a streamlined lines that makes the roads look quite attractive. And at the same time provides a lot more luggage space in the back. So that's a more practical car. And I'm definitely a coupe man. The only question is, are these Smart Roadsters just fashion accessories? Are they real drivers' cars? The Avenida Ayrton Senna da Silva. The great man himself used to live around here. Now, I think that's Madonna's house, and Chris Evans has got a new gaff somewhere around here. It's all very smart. Enough of the tourist trip. I think it's time we find some slightly more demanding roads. I must say I'm much happier sitting inside this Smart Roadster than I was standing looking at it from the outside. It's got a really comfortable driving position with good seats and a nice funky interior to give you a good feeling. I love these little frog-eyed dials. We've got the boost there on the temperature gauge and rev counter and speedo right in front of me. And also this top-of-the-range car, I've got all the luxuries. I've got air conditioning, I've got heated seats, we've got a trip meter down here. It really is a quality car. When you're going slower, you can back off and then listen to your turbocharge whistling away in the back. And in fact, that little turbocharged engine is surprisingly responsive. It gets up and wants to go. Bored out to 700cc, the three-cylinder power plant now produces 80 bhp and an almost respectable 0 to 60 in 10.9 seconds. But it still only comes with its annoyingly reluctant semi-automatic gearbox. It's a vast improvement on the original Smart ones that drove you all mad. But even so, there's always going to be times when it doesn't do what you want it to do, when you want to change down or when you're turning around trying to grab reverse quickly. Driving-wise, all Smarts now have Mercedes ESP anti-skid control, which seems amazing on cars of this price. But fortunately, it can always be switched off. In the dry, it doesn't really make that much difference. In fact, all the Smart ever really does is understeer, and if you go into a corner a bit too quick, it will push wide at the front. So you probably might as well leave it switched on. It hasn't got the classic sports car handling, but it is an awful lot of fun, much more fun than I thought it would be. It's got to be taken seriously. Right-hand drive versions hit the UK in September, with prices starting at around 13.5 grand and rising to 14.5 for the fully spec'd up coupe. And so to the end of our little Portuguese adventure, where this Smart Roadster has turned out to be something of a surprise. It's certainly a lot more sports car than it is fashion accessory, and sure to provide plenty of funky fun to all sorts of generations. Sadly, though, it's not quite for me, because I just can't get used to that ugly snout, nor, improved though it is, could I ever live with that gearbox.
We're back with road rage and have taken Rob Hughes, a man who drives close to boiling point.
Is she on the phone? Yeah, is. Stupid cow.
And tried to reform him. Our car quack, Conrad King, has told Rob to treat other road users with the same patience he gives dawdling pedestrians in the high street.
Right, and if you want to just stop, turn the engine off. Right, before we start, before we drive anywhere, you've got to decide how you want to drive. So how do you want to drive today?
Well, courteously would be a good start.
It would be a good start. Getting your mind right before you even begin a journey is vitally important. It's much easier preventing road rage than curing it. Conrad's second tip is to do with not placing such high expectations on other road users' skills.
There are millions of idiots out there on the road, and you have to do some thinking for them, if only to retain your sanity. When you're kind of wanting them to do stuff perfectly, they're not going to do it, and you're always going to get annoyed. You're always going to get irritated.
The third important thing to do is give people plenty of room. It's impossible to be cut up if there's a big gap in front of you.
So here, you've got someone indicating there, because you're not 10 or 15 feet behind the green car, there's plenty of space for them to get in, and you're not feeling like, oh, you should be telling them off. Plenty of space, even when you come to a stop. Leave plenty of space. In theory, you know, if the car in front breaks down, you want to have space to get round it. Yeah. Or if you're really paranoid, if the car in front is full of South American terrorists, you want to be able to kind of speed away. But fortunately, you're not quite that paranoid. Give us another half hour.
Well, we did, but his paranoia didn't increase, and South American terrorists didn't turn up either. In fact, everything seemed to be going well, despite the rush hour, tricky roundabouts, and a school at chucking out time. Not once did Rob reach for his horn. He even started giving way to oncoming traffic.
Probably would have tried to have a go at making that one.
Yeah. And you got one wave out of two, and you'd have probably got a wave off the blonde if you'd have waved at her first.
Ah, so there are benefits to being courteous. But then the ultimate test. We all tensed as a white van loomed large ahead on a direct collision course. Surely he'd reach for his horn.
Come on, that white van was in the middle of the road, and you didn't even blink.
I saw him come in, sort of anticipated using a white van, and make allowances.
Making allowances? What? No swearing? This is a new Rob. It seemed Conrad's advice had got through. Fingers crossed, he won't forget it. Of course, we can't all carry a psychiatrist around in our glove box, but we can all learn to count to 10.
So the next time the twerp in the Transit or the Burke in the BM cuts you up, or worse, don't rise to it. Don't get angry, just stay calm. They're not worth getting stressed about.